Hello everybody, welcome back once again. This is your girl, Ayla Mode, and I really wanted to dig in today on womanhood. It's not a topic that's really discussed too often or at all, not from anything that I've seen, and a big part of my transition was actually accepting and finding my womanhood and what it meant to me. So I knew that I was trans for 10 years, but it wasn't until the last 2 years that I had actually committed to the notion that I was actually going to go through with transitioning, that was going to be my reality, how I was going to go about that, and again, defining, what being a woman meant to me. So I was really grateful to have, some close friends, my best friend and my soul sister, that I really trusted with my experience and situation, so that I could discuss and ask more from them, about what womanhood meant to them, and maybe comparing my own thoughts and experiences. Ultimately, the big thing that I found asking a number of people was that womanhood is really hard to describe because it means so many different things to so many different people. And at the end of the day, womanhood really is defined by its self-conviction. It's knowing for yourself that you are a woman. It's having really worked to prove it to yourself, or even just, working to accept that this is who you are, this is your reality, and it's just is what it is. And ultimately, I feel very similar. I know for myself that I always undoubtedly felt like a child in my youth. It wasn't until, my parents and other authority roles as a child said to me that, I wasn't allowed to do the things that I thought I wanted to. And when I said that I wanted to grow up and be a mother, I couldn't do that because I was a boy. And you can't wear a dress because you're a boy. And there were so many times where I was told I couldn't do something because I was a boy, or I was gonna grow up and be a man. It really kind of beat into me this notion that I wasn't allowed to be a woman. So by the time I was 5 years old, I already knew that when I saw Britney Spears perform Oops, I Did It Again, and was trying to replicate some of those moves and really felt a sense of liberation in that moment, that I was struck with a lot of shame as well, because I wasn't allowed to feel that liberation. It was taboo or wrong of me to really sit in that womanhood, that sense of flow and everything else that I knew about myself. There's a beautiful conversation between Janet Mock and Oprah Winfrey on a Super Soul Sunday episode where she discusses that she always knew as a child that she was a woman, but it was the constant kind of discipline that you weren't allowed to feel that way. It was a constant questioning of self, and I know that that's actually one of the biggest forms of anxiety that I have, is questioning my reality, because I undoubtedly knew for myself that my reality was that I was a woman, and to constantly have that invalidated made me feel like I couldn't trust my own notions and sense of reality. So a lot of anxiety that I get today, a lot of the anxiety attacks I get are centered around me questioning whether I'm out of touch with reality, if I'm, having an inappropriate view or grasp on what it is. And of course, it makes it that much harder to persist through when, transphobes especially are saying you're delusional and you're out of touch. It took a lot of self-conviction, it took a lot of soul searching to really come to this point of returning to, I am indescribably a woman. Nothing that anyone can say or do to me would say otherwise. So in my search for finding and defining what womanhood meant to me, I found that a lot of the issues very much paralleled internalized transphobia, because to go through an entire childhood and upbringing of having the notion of understanding my reality of being a woman knocked out of me, I was having to refight that and relearn to connect with my instincts and my intuition, which beyond being trans was also very good for being an empath, but it was really a huge part of the healing process. And I really should say that, transitioning, I am not a woman because I transitioned. I transitioned as a part of my healing process of coming back and returning to my womanhood. Transitioning is a symptom of my healing and returning to my inner authenticity. Another point that I really kind of struggled on is that so often people typically define womanhood by the ability to bear children and bring life into this world. And I very much had that in myself because when I was young, a big part of how I knew I was a woman was, wanting to grow up and be a mother. And it wasn't just some foolish notion, it was a lifelong dream. I was really kind of shamed that, I wouldn't be able to have that and that I was born into a body that just didn't nurture that. I was actually struck by a speech of self-conviction and womanhood by Jacqueline Schultz, who is one of the runner-ups in, I can't remember what season of Survivors, but she was talking about how she has a condition called MRKH, and how this affects 1 in 4,000 Americans. To simply define a woman by her ability to reproduce is ridiculous, because what MRKH is or kind of does is maybe a woman might be born without an incomplete reproductive system, or a reproductive system that just isn't able to have a child or reproduce. Many people would still say that they're a biological woman, as much as I don't really agree with those terms, but for lack of better terms, they have a condition that very much hinders the one thing so many people are willing to crutch womanhood on. I, for myself, found so much relief and comfort in hearing this from her, because for once I was able to let go that it wasn't just me who wasn't able to reproduce, it wasn't just me who was able to bear life. Many women in this world aren't. Even for my mother, she had 2 kids, and then it became harmful for her body to produce anymore, so she wasn't able to as much as she wanted to. So many women in this world have complications or issues with reproduction, and I had to grow to be bigger than myself, to let go of my shame and recognize that this wasn't just me, and that I can still connect to womanhood despite this shame or feelings about myself. Undoubtedly, I would still say that finding and connecting with that sense of womanhood is one of the biggest healing processes in transition, at least for me, and I'm sure it is for many others. I am also so blessed to be in a time when so many other trans folk are out. Trans women are sharing narratives about, I am a woman because I always knew I was the woman. And it took me a while to kind of get back to that intuition that I had as a child, that this is me, and that I know myself better than anyone else, despite what my parents tell me, despite what anyone says about me because of my genitalia or body. I know that I am, and I worked for it. Nothing can shake me now from this understanding and connection with myself that I am a woman. This is who I am. Regardless, I would love to keep this discussion going. So, please feel free to share with me what your sense of womanhood is, or if you're a trans woman or even non-binary, it would be very interesting to hear, what does womanhood mean to you? What was your experience in claiming womanhood? Any kind of stories surrounding this, I would be, extremely intrigued to hear. The floor is now open to you. You can share your comments. And until next time, remember to keep your pencil sharp, but your mind sharper. Ciao!